Hello and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. It's March 9th, 2023, so already into our third month of the year. This year seems to be going by quick as well. March Madness is right around the corner, is going to start next week. We have a lot of the big conference tournaments are obviously happening right now. March Madness isn't really going to be a part of the show. That'll be the big part of the show next week will be my March Madness breakdown once the brackets come out. And once we see where some of the top teams are seeded and things like that, that'll be a big part of the show. But today is all going to be about the NFL. A lot of big NFL news has dropped this week, and more NFL news is going to continue to drop. Next Monday starts the legal tampering period, so when teams can actually reach out to free agents and start talking to them. And then Wednesday is when free agency opens, when those free agents can actually sign with teams. Trades are still obviously available, and there's already been some players that have signed with teams and things like that as well. But like I said, today is going to be all about the NFL, so let's go ahead and jump into the topics. First things first, we're going to start with the huge news that dropped Tuesday, and that was the Baltimore Ravens deciding to go with the non-exclusive tag for Lamar Jackson instead of the exclusive tag or looking for a long-term contract. So we'll go ahead and talk about the ramifications of that and what is going to happen, what can happen going forward, and what's the Baltimore Ravens' plans, and maybe what's Lamar Jackson's plans, and what is the market for Lamar Jackson as well. And then next, we'll go to the New York Giants and Daniel Jones getting 4 years, $160 million per year. $160 million contract, $40 million per year. Changes a little bit in year 3 and 4, but still going to talk about that contract for Daniel Jones. Is Daniel Jones worth that contract? And what are the Giants doing? What are the Giants saying by giving Daniel Jones that type of contract? And then a third topic of the day is going to be, is Aaron Rodgers going to the New York Jets? It seems to me that the only place that Aaron Rodgers could be next year without retiring or returning to the Green Bay Packers is the New York Jets. We'll break down that situation and what has unfolded and what has happened this week. And then my final topic of the day is going to be Derek Carr joining the New Orleans Saints. Talk about the ramifications of that and what can Derek Carr bring to the New Orleans Saints that they haven't had over the last couple of years. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the show. So as I mentioned, our first topic of the day is the Baltimore Ravens deciding to go with the non-exclusive tag for Lamar Jackson. So this is huge. This came to a shock to me. I thought that the Ravens would go with the exclusive tag. Obviously, the exclusive tag pays $45 million, where the non-exclusive tag pays $32.4 million. So you save some money there, but you give Lamar Jackson and you give other teams the chance to talk to Lamar Jackson, to contact Lamar Jackson, and even a chance to sign Lamar Jackson to an offer sheet. Sorry about that. But sign Lamar Jackson to an offer sheet, and if the Baltimore Ravens don't match that offer of any other team, it could be any team in the entire league. If the Baltimore Ravens don't match that offer, then Lamar Jackson will go to that team. Now, the Baltimore Ravens will be compensated with 2 first-round picks from that team that Lamar Jackson goes to, but he will be able to go to that team. And like I said, that shocks me a little bit here. I didn't think that the Baltimore Ravens were willing to make this step yet. I could see them making this step next year because the exclusive tag is really expensive next year. But this year I thought that at least give him the exclusive tag so no other teams can talk to him and see if they can't, come to some kind of common ground on a long-term contract and figure out what they're going to do with Lamar Jackson going forward. But I think the Baltimore Ravens look at this situation and say, we've been negotiating a contract with Lamar Jackson for the last 2 years. He hasn't come off of the stance that he wants a fully guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson got from the Cleveland Browns. So I think right now what the Baltimore Ravens are doing is they're letting Lamar Jackson see what his market actually is, because they can't just tell him what his market is and Lamar Jackson just take their word as gospel. He can't just take the Baltimore Ravens' word saying that, hey, no one's going to give you a fully guaranteed contract. The Deshaun Watson contract with the Cleveland Browns is an outlier. It's something that no one's going to do. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns aren't really a well-run organization, and they haven't been a well-run organization for a long time. So most people aren't going to follow suit with what they do anyway, especially in the case of Deshaun Watson's contract. So the Baltimore Ravens they're basically, like I said, I think what they're doing is they're telling Lamar Jackson, go out there and see what your market is. See what your market is, and we'll talk to you after you see your market. And I think that's that's exactly, like I said, what they're doing because, like I said at the beginning, Lamar Jackson hasn't come off the stance that he wants a fully guaranteed contract. The Baltimore Ravens reportedly have offered him a number of contracts, some with those even to $150 to close to $200 million guaranteed, and Lamar Jackson has turned that down with the return offer of a fully guaranteed contract. So, yes, the Baltimore Ravens haven't handled this situation great, but they pretty much have done everything that they can do to try to make sure that Lamar Jackson signs a long-term deal with them and remains a Baltimore Raven for at least the next 4 to 5 years. Now, obviously, they could have done more, but when you're negotiating with Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent, it's just him acting as his agent along with his mom. So that makes it a lot more difficult as well, because when you negotiate with an agent, the agent knows his players' market. They know they have some sort of relationship with the organization. They have relationships with other organizations around the league. So you can ask that agent, hey, what's Lamar Jackson's market? If you were to go ask around to other owners and general managers in this league, what is the market for Lamar Jackson, and is there a possibility that he could get a fully guaranteed contract from another team? And if the agent comes back and says yes, then maybe you look to Lamar Jackson and say, hey, maybe we will give you that fully guaranteed contract. If the agent comes back and says no, then you have the higher ground. You have the power to say to Lamar Jackson, and obviously his agent as well, listen, your agent went out there to the market. He said that there is not a fully guaranteed contract available for you. No one is going to give you a fully guaranteed contract. And what we said, that Deshaun Watson contract with the Browns is an outlier and is something that's not going to happen going forward. So this is what we're willing to give you. This is going to be the best contract that you can get. But they're not able to do that because Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent. So basically, everything they're telling Lamar Jackson, he has no idea if that is really the case. He doesn't know if that's his market. He thinks, obviously, as a professional athlete, the level of Lamar Jackson, he's always going to think that he is worth probably more than he actually is. And that is a good kind of mindset to have anyway. But agents know your actual value, and they know your value to an organization where players do not know their actual value, and they're always going to kind of overemphasize and overestimate their actual value. So I think first things first, Lamar Jackson needs to sit down and figure out and get an agent. Get an agent that's going to go out there and talk to these other teams now that you are on the open market technically, and figure out what your value is. And if you find out that your value is not a fully guaranteed contract, which I think is the case, then you can go back to the Baltimore Ravens and you can negotiate, and maybe you can reopen some of the contracts that they've given you. But right now, it doesn't look like Lamar Jackson is in any rush to hire an agent. The Baltimore Ravens aren't flinching either on this fully guaranteed contract. And as soon as they gave him the non-exclusive tag, within hours of the Baltimore Ravens announcing that they were going to give Lamar Jackson the non-exclusive tag, there was multiple teams. You had the Falcons, you had the Panthers, you had the Raiders, you had the Buccaneers come out and say that we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. Now, that could all just be smoke and mirrors. That could just be organizations just saying that because they technically can't come out and say that they would be interested in Lamar Jackson, because that could be seen as tampering. Up until Monday, they can't do that. So that could all be smoke and mirrors, and that could all just be just kind of pondering by those organizations. But either way, it does look like there might be a little bit of collusion going on between the owners and of the NFL teams in the league, and they don't want to give players a fully guaranteed contract. And especially a guy now, Lamar Jackson is an unbelievable special talent player. He is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this league. But he also is a guy that has missed 10 games the last 2 seasons, 5 games apiece. He actually missed a game the year prior as well, but he's missed 10 games in the last 2 seasons. And he plays the way he plays football, and the kind of his body and how his body is built. It may not be built, and a lot of people are questioning if it is built for the long haul in this league. Because obviously what makes Lamar Jackson great and what makes him a special player in the NFL is his ability to run, is his ability to make people miss on the run, is his quickness, is just his overall speed and his vision and everything that comes with him running the football. Now, he has gotten better from the pocket, but I don't believe, and I think a lot of people around the NFL don't believe that he will ever become a refined passer from the pocket as a quarterback. So his gifts are always going to be with his legs, and maybe he will improve as a passer going on. But at the end of the day, what makes him great and what makes him keep defensive coordinators up at night is his legs. But that also can hurt him and his overall durability going forward, and it's already hurt his durability these last 2 seasons. So you're a guy that has potential durability issues. You're playing the quarterback position, in a way that has not been sustainable, and there is proof. Whether it's Michael Vick, who got her, obviously RG3's career was derailed early on. There has been proof that being a running quarterback and having that being your main strength as a quarterback is not sustainable in the NFL. Especially now, Lamar Jackson's not a short guy, but he is kind of more of a slender guy. So when he takes those hits, he doesn't take them. He doesn't absorb them as well as a guy like Cam Newton would have, or a guy like Josh Allen can, because they have a bigger, stronger body. So he takes those hits a little bit harder than those guys do. So with those durability issues and kind of the slender body and the unsustainable way that he plays the game, he's not going to get a fully guaranteed contract from anybody. Now, I could be wrong, and someone's willing to give him a fully guaranteed contract just because they're desperate to have an elite level quarterback on their team. But if I was a GM, I probably wouldn't give him a fully guaranteed contract. I'd probably give him 150 to 180 million guaranteed and maybe a 4-year contract with about $45 to $50 million per year. But that would probably be the extent of what GMs are willing to give him. And obviously, from the reports that we've heard, the conversations that he's had with the Baltimore Ravens, he wants a fully guaranteed contract, and he's not willing to come off of that stance. So that's going to be difficult for him going forward. But either way, it'll be interesting to see how this situation unfolds. Obviously, like I said, I was shocked that they gave him the non-exclusive tag instead of the exclusive tag. But I really do believe that the Baltimore Ravens want Lamar Jackson to see his market and see that there's not teams in this league willing to give him, or willing to really give anybody, a fully guaranteed contract. There's probably only a handful of players in this league, like a Patrick Mahomes or someone like that, that would probably get a fully guaranteed contract. And Patrick Mahomes' contract isn't fully guaranteed. And he signed that contract coming off of a Super Bowl victory. And obviously, he's proven to be the best quarterback in the league and a very durable quarterback as well, because he plays from the pocket. So we'll see how this goes. I think some of those teams that came out and said that they weren't interested in Lamar Jackson, I think it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and they're just saying that because they can't say that they're interested in him. I think his market is bigger than what people are saying, but his market, I don't believe, is going to include a team willing to give him a fully guaranteed contract. So at the end of the day, I think he ends up playing for the Ravens, either on the non-exclusive tag, or finds out that his market, that he's not going to get a fully guaranteed contract, and the Ravens and him do come to an agreement on the long-term contract that is not fully guaranteed. But like I said, either way, this will be interesting to watch over the next couple of weeks and see how it unfolds and see how Lamar Jackson's market really unfolds as well. With that being said, we'll go ahead and move to my second topic of the day, and that is Daniel Jones getting a 4-year, $160 million contract. Now, that is slated to pay him $40 million over the first 2 years. Things get a little different after the second year. There is some more incentive base. There is more options for the Giants to get out of the contract. I'm not a contract or expert when it comes to that, so I'm not going to break that down. But still, when you look at this, Daniel Jones, after just an average year, he had 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3,200 yards. So it wasn't a great year. It was a good year by his measure, and a lot better year than he had the 2 previous years, but still not a great year. And in my opinion, he is not a guy that is worth $40 million per year. And when the Giants decided to give Daniel Jones this contract, what they have actually said, at least in my opinion, because now that you're giving him $40 million a year over the next couple of years, and further than that, gets a little bit cheaper after that, but still, it kind of hurts. It hits your cap space a little bit, so you have holes that you need to fill on this team, whether that's offensive line, wide receiver, tight ends. You need to get Daniel Jones some sort of weapons. That's going to be more difficult because it's going to be harder to pay them because you're putting so much money into Daniel Jones. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know how many elite free agent receivers or tight ends are really excited for the possibility to go play with Daniel Jones as well, because, like I said, I don't think he's that great of a player. I think he's an average quarterback at best. But like I said, what the Giants are effectively saying is that they're okay with being pretty good going forward for at least the next 4 years. They're okay with being pretty good. because I'm not a Daniel Jones fan at all. He had a good year this year. You saw some improvement. He had an average year this year, 15 touchdowns in 16 games. He didn't have more touchdown passes than games played, and he has never had more touchdown passes than games played outside of his rookie season, and that was kind of an outlier, and his last 2 seasons were just straight awful. Had some improvement this year. He does have some physical athletic ability. He can run the ball, but he is very limited as far as arm strength. He does not have a big, strong arm. His accuracy is not good at all. His decision-making has gotten better because he hasn't fumbled or turned over the ball that much, but that is 1 year. And I thought that there was a little chance that Lamar Jackson would get the non-exclusive tag. I thought Daniel Jones was built for the non-exclusive tag, because you can put the non-exclusive tag on Daniel Jones, pay him $32.4 million for this year. But if a team really wants to come and get Daniel Jones, then you get 2 first-round picks along with the first-round pick that you already have. You can go get a rookie quarterback, or you can maybe make a trade for a veteran quarterback, or sign one of the veteran free agent quarterbacks that are out there. But if no one's willing to do that, and I don't think anybody would be willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Daniel Jones, you give him another prove-it year. I believe that Daniel Jones needed another prove-it year. I don't think he was worth $40 million off the back of this season. Like I said, 15 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions, 3,200 yards. Patrick Mahomes had more than 15 touchdown passes by October. So, I mean, I know that I'm comparing him to the best quarterback in the league, but still, what you're doing is you're rewarding average, and you're saying that we're okay with being average to pretty good. I understand you wanted to keep the franchise tag open to get Saquon Barkley, so you franchise tag Saquon Barkley, and he's going to get about $10 million per year. So what you're telling Saquon Barkley is that Daniel Jones is worth $30 million per year over him, even though Saquon Barkley was clearly your number one offensive threat. That to me makes no sense. That to me makes no sense at all. I don't see how you can compute that there. I know Brian Daboll is sort of a quarterback whisperer, and what he did with Josh Allen was really good, but Josh Allen had a lot more traits than Daniel Jones does. Josh Allen has twice the arm of Daniel Jones. He's a better athlete than Daniel Jones. He's not maybe more accurate, or decision-making is a little bit more questionable, but he is the better overall quarterback, and he had better traits. I think what Brian Daboll got out of Daniel Jones this year is probably close to the ceiling for Daniel Jones. I see him being maybe his ceiling being about 20 touchdowns, maybe 4 to 5, 6 or 7 rushing on the ground, but I don't see him being any better than that. And in fact, I actually listed out 16 quarterbacks in the NFL that I would take over Daniel Jones, and here they are. It's Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, and Tua Tagovailoa. I would take all 16 of those quarterbacks over Daniel Jones. You could maybe make an argument versus him over Kyler Murray because of the size issue, or him over Tua because of the concussion issue, and him over Deshaun Watson because Deshaun Watson looked like he regressed after the time he missed. But I would still take those 3 quarterbacks over Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, to me, he's maybe the 17th or 18th best quarterback in the league. I would probably consider taking guys like Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, guys like that over Daniel Jones as well. So to me, he's maybe a top 20 quarterback in this league, and he is definitely a guy that I don't believe was worth the $40 million contract. But I guess the Giants are just okay with being pretty good and being the 3rd best team in their division, and probably like the 6th or 7th best team in their conference, and not really looking to be a Super Bowl or championship level contender, because I don't believe Daniel Jones is a quarterback that can lead you to a championship or a Super Bowl unless you end up with a roster like the San Francisco 49ers, and you're not going to end up with a roster like the San Francisco 49ers. So, I mean, hats off to Daniel Jones. You got paid off of an average year. Good for you. But the Giants, I don't like this move for you at all. And if I'm Saquon Barkley, I get out of there next year after this year after being tagged, because I don't think the fortunes are great for the Giants going forward. They may be a fringe playoff team or a wild card team, but that is best case scenario for them. Even in that division, I think they're worse, obviously, than the Eagles, worse than the Cowboys, and in my opinion, the Commanders have a better roster than the New York Giants. If they can find just a competent quarterback, they could be better than the New York Giants as well. With all that being said, we'll go ahead and move to our third topic of the day. We're obviously going to stay in the NFL, and we're going to stay in the NFC as well. And we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, but bring in a little bit AFC flair. And is the question of, is he heading to the New York Jets? So a couple of days ago, I believe it was a Sunday or Monday, the Green Bay Packers did give Aaron Rodgers permission to talk to the New York Jets. And then Tuesday, the Jets sent their owner, Woody Johnson, their GM, Joe Douglas, their head coach, Robert Saleh, and their new offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, who was obviously the offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers a couple years ago with Aaron Rodgers, sent all four of those guys out to California to Rodgers' house in California to meet with Aaron Rodgers. So the Jets are all in. The Jets are all in. They lost out on Derek Carr. They basically told Derek Carr when they met with him that he was their second option, and they wanted to see what would happen with Aaron Rodgers first. So that's why Derek Carr decided to go to the Saints. So you lost out on Derek Carr. Your only options right now is probably Aaron Rodgers and Jimmy Garoppolo, or maybe you look to trade up in the draft. But I really think that the Jets are all in for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets were a team that won 7 games last year. They started off hot. I believe they were 6-3 at one point, or 5-3 at one point. So they were a good team, and they have good weapons. Obviously, they have the reigning offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall was looking really good before he got injured, so that's another good weapon for them as well. Corey Davis isn't a bad wide receiver. They do have some good weapons on offense, and that defense is really where they make their hay. You got Sauce Gardner, the reigning defensive rookie of the year. Quentin Williams has really come along and is a force on the defensive line. So the defense is really where this team kind of makes their hay, like I said. And obviously with Robert Saleh, their coach, who is a defensive guy, they're going to get just better and better on the defensive side. And their young stars are going to get better and better as they become veterans in this league. So the Jets is a team that has a roster that can make the playoffs and potentially win the division. Still don't know if they would be better than the Bills. I don't think they would be better than the Bills, even with Aaron Rodgers. But they're a team that looks at their roster and looks at their situation and says, we haven't had a quarterback. I mean, the Jets haven't really had a great quarterback since maybe the 90s, and you can go all the way back to the 60s when they had Joe Namath. That's probably the best quarterback in their franchise's history, and I think Joe Namath is one of the most overrated players in NFL history, but he's probably the best quarterback in their franchise's history. So they look, okay, maybe we can get Aaron Rodgers for 2-3 years and see what we can do with the roster that we have. They have some, they do have some cap space. Maybe they're able to get another weapon for Aaron Rodgers, but they're a team that is desperate to be relevant. They haven't been relevant in a long time, basically since Rex Ryan was their coach there. They haven't made the playoffs in a long time either. So they're a team that is desperate to be relevant, finally with an above-average roster that they can actually have and be relevant with. And all they really need, at least what they think, is they need a competent quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers, even though he's 39 and will be 40 before the season, the 2023 season ends, is a competent quarterback and is still a top-level, top 10 quarterback. So he could be a guy, if he is invested and if he wants to be a New York Jet, that can come in and could potentially lead them to a playoff spot and contend in that division. But that is the question. That is the biggest question. Is A, does Aaron Rodgers want to be a New York Jet? And B, if he does go to the New York Jets, is he invested and does he want to be there for the next 2 to 3 years? And is he invested in making a playoff run and making this team what obviously the organization for the New York Jets believe they can be? Because you just never know with Aaron Rodgers. With Aaron Rodgers, from day to day, from week to week, from year to year, you never know how he feels, what he's thinking, or just how invested into the game of football he is. Every offseason for the last 3 off seasons, he talked about retirement. That is still something that he talks about all the time, whether it's on the Pat McAfee show or in other capacities as well. He's always talking about the potential that he could retire. So the investment and just the overall wanting to be in the NFL, for me, with the Jets, that would be another big question. Because obviously, you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and he's 10 times the quarterback that you've had the last couple of years, whether it's Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, or Mike White. He's 10 times the quarterback of all 3 of those quarterbacks, especially Zach Wilson. He decided to pick with the second overall pick a couple of years ago. But I would sit down, and obviously they already have sat down with Aaron Rodgers, and make sure that he wants to be a New York Jet, and not just for the 2023 season. at least for the 2024 season and potentially for the 2025 season, barring any injury, of course. But I think this is going to get done. I think if you're the New York Jets, you go and talk to the Packers and say, hey, we need you to eat some of that contract because we can't afford to pay Aaron Rodgers all this money and then have a full team to put out on the field. He's that big of a cap hit with his salary and his overall salary on a year-to-year basis. So I think the Jets will ask the Green Bay Packers to eat some of that contract and take over some of that contract as well. But I'm guessing the Green Bay Packers are going to ask for multiple picks, multiple first-round picks. It's going to have to be decent compensation for their franchise quarterback and the guy who's been their franchise quarterback for the last almost 15 years. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And then just to look at this from the Green Bay Packers perspective, from everything that they've been saying, whether it's their owner or their GM, Brian Gutekunst, they seem to be ready to move on to Jordan Love and see what they have with Jordan Love. They took Jordan Love in the first round about 4 years ago. He hasn't really gotten a fair chance to start for the Green Bay Packers because obviously Aaron Rodgers has been their quarterback and has won 2 MVPs in that time as well. But like I said, it seems all indications seem that the Green Bay Packers are ready to move on from Aaron Rodgers and start the Jordan Love era, however long that may be, but at least move on from there and start that era with Jordan Love. Jets seem to be the only team really interested in Aaron Rodgers. I think he does end up a New York Jet, but I do think the Packers are going to have to eat some of that contract, and they're also going to ask a decent amount in return from the New York Jets as well. But we'll see how that ends up. It's something very, very fascinating. It's kind of like the Tom Brady situation a couple years ago. A veteran quarterback that still has some left in the tank can go to a team that is ready to make a playoff run. That could happen with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, and we could see what they're able to do going forward. With all that being said, we'll go ahead and end my show today with my final topic, and that is Derek Carr signing with the New Orleans Saints. Now, this dropped on Monday. He signed a 4-year, $150 million contract with $100 million guaranteed. Now, this contract is a lot like the Daniel Jones contract. A lot of the money is kind of front-loaded in the first 2 years. After the first 2 years, gives more flexibility to the Saints to maybe move off of him, and they're paying him a lot less in the first 2 years. And there's also some incentives based on getting that fully guaranteed money for Derek Carr as well. But the biggest question is, how much of an upgrade is Derek Carr over Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill? I think he's a decent upgrade over those guys. Jameis Winston, obviously, he didn't really have the support of the locker room because, as you could tell, as soon as Derek Carr was announced that he was signing with the Saints, guys like Cameron Jordan, Michael Thomas, other guys on the team, Chris Olave, the rookie standout wide receiver last year, tweeted immediately almost that they were so happy to have Derek Carr in the fold and finally to have a competent quarterback in the fold that they think that could lead them to a playoff berth. So just goes to show you that Andy Dalton really never had the locker room, and Jameis Winston never had the locker room either. Andy Dalton was really brought in last year to be the backup to Jameis Winston, but took over for Jameis after he got injured and was just ineffective at the beginning of the season. But either way, both of those guys are journeyman backup quarterbacks at this point if they're going to stay in the NFL. Derek Carr is a legitimate starting quarterback in this league. I think he's a top 12 quarterback in this league. Now, he is coming off of his worst year as a starter last year with the Raiders, but I believe that the relationship and the fractured relationship with Josh McDaniels last year and just everything that Derek Carr has had to go through, he's had 6 head coaches in his career already, and everything that he's had to go through, I think that really led to his poor performance last year. I think he's going to be revitalized playing with the New Orleans Saints. His head coach is going to be Dennis Allen, who was the defensive coordinator for the Raiders in the past. So there's familiarity already with the coaching staff and Derek Carr. You have a great young wide receiver to build with in Chris Olave. We'll see what happens with the Alvin Kamara situation with the whole fight in Vegas and everything like that. We'll see how that unfolds. And then obviously we'll see how invested Michael Thomas is. But if Michael Thomas can return, to just close to what he was 3 years ago, you pair him with Chris Olave, and that could be a really, really good offense. They do have some other weapons as well that are a little bit unheralded, but do have potential to get even better. But the big news for Derek Carr and going to the New Orleans Saints is he finally has a good defense. The New Orleans Saints were top 10 last year in points allowed and yards allowed defense-wise. So this would be the best defense that he's ever played with. Derek Carr has never played on a team with a top 15 defense, let alone a top 10 defense. And the New Orleans Saints were actually top 5 in yards allowed last year. This is a team that has a good defense. Getting a little older, Cameron Jordan and guys like that are getting a little older, Tyrann Mathieu as well, but they're still very good, very productive players. And obviously with Dennis Allen being a defensive guy as the head coach, the scheme worked out very well for this New Orleans Saints team as well. So he's going to be playing with the top 10 defense, which is going to bode well for him as well. But the biggest thing I think that's going to be an improvement for the Saints team and why Derek Carr decided to go there is they're playing in the worst division in football, and that is the NFC South. And the NFC South was won last year by an 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that had Tom Brady as their quarterback. Tom Brady has since retired, and he is not going to be their quarterback. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't look like they don't have a high pick, so they're not really going to be able to get one of these rookie quarterbacks, at least one of the upper-level rookie quarterbacks. They don't seem to be in on Aaron Rodgers. They weren't in on Derek Carr. They've already announced that they're not in on Lamar Jackson. Maybe they're in on Jimmy Garoppolo, but I would take Derek Carr over Jimmy Garoppolo. But Derek Carr steps into the NFC South and instantly becomes the best quarterback in that division, and it's not even close. So now you have a top 10 defense, the best defense probably in that division also, and you have the best quarterback in that division. The New Orleans Saints might be able to walk into the playoffs even with just 9 wins because how bad that NFC South is. So that was another reason I believe that Derek Carr chose to go to the New Orleans Saints, with just how bad that division is. But either way, like I said, I do think that this is a pretty decent upgrade for the New Orleans Saints. I think this makes them the best team in that division by far, and maybe a top 5 or 6 team in the conference, because the NFC, to me, is basically the Eagles and the Niners and everybody else at this point. So this can make them an overall contender in the NFC, or at least a fringe contender right behind those 2 top teams, maybe even behind like the Cowboys or some other teams as well. But either way, good for Derek Carr to get a situation that I think can be successful for him, and good for the New Orleans Saints finally getting, I think, an above-average competent quarterback that could lead them to the playoffs, especially in that bad division. With all that being said, thank you for watching and listening to this show. Obviously, you can watch this show on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. If you prefer to listen on the audio version, it is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible under Sports Talk on a Budget. And please like and subscribe to this channel on YouTube. And please follow me on my social media channels under Sports Talk on a Budget, whether that's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. Thank you again for listening and watching, and have a great day.